The SBA will usually back it. And when they do, and the business goes belly up, and the bank has to foreclose on the assets, the SBA has certain requirements that they make the bank hoops, if you will, the bank has to jump through in this process. And so you really never talk to anybody at the SBA. You're usually talking to a banker. They go, this is SBA, and so usually one of the first things they say is, we got to have an appraisal to find. What they want is somebody professional to tell them this is worth selling, or it's not worth anything, and we can abandon it and just walk away. And so a lot of times, the banker will call and say, we need that. So I said, well, yeah, you have photographs, inventory, whatever. They say, sure, send them over. I can look at it in a second. You start flipping through it, and you go, oh, there's 3, 5-year-old forklifts. We can stop right there. There's enough there to have a sale. And, you got a bunch of other stuff. And call them back and say, yeah, there is. And they said, send me over something. I'd send them over something on a letterhead. Say, we've inspected the inventory and the photographs, and we believe this auction's in excess of $100,000, certainly worth pursuing, yada, 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 and they're great. Sometimes they want a full appraisal before they'll do that. And then other than that, there's really not anything. That's the biggest thing, is the SBA wants to make sure before we go to the expense of paying a company, an auctioneer, whatever, that they're actually going to get money when the smoke clears. Because a lot of times the assets have, been depleted, depreciated to nothing, etc., and there is nothing there to sell.
And, quick question.
Uh-huh.
Is SBA, are they the same ones that give those grants and those things to small businesses?
Small business
Yeah. Local municipalities, cities, especially small cities, counties, universities, and then there's other government organizations that have assets that sometimes need to be liquidated. So there's opportunities there. The Internal Revenue Service. The Internal Revenue Service, sometimes, sometimes they don't call you. You talk to a seller, and then you do a UCC search. If you're ever liquidating a business, one of the first things you do, we have this on our contract, ask them, are there any liens against your business? And they say, oh, no. Okay, write none in that spot. And of course, they're going to sign that. And, not that I don't trust people, but I don't trust people. And it's just a business decision. We search the UCC filings at our Secretary of State's online. Very easy to do. You get the business name. You always want the legal business name. And XYZ Trucking Incorporated, whatever, and you put that in, you enter it, and then any liens that are filed with the Secretary of State, at least, will come up, and you can see that. Well, one of my better stories about Mike Jones and I, we did an auction for a company called Austin Construction Steel 20 years ago, and the man was a Medal of Honor recipient from the Korean War. And he looked like somebody out of Central Casting, supposed to play Grandpa. Distinguished looking older gentleman, really nice. And I just fell in love with him. I just thought he was the greatest thing in the world. And so, we asked him about any liens. No, we sign all up. Well, I still got to run the UCC search. Run the UCC search, and holy smokes, it's just... And I print it, and it's thick. And the Internal Revenue Service is at the top. And I'm like, okay. Went back down to his office. We had to do something else, and I said, hey, what about that Internal Revenue Service lien? And he's like, oh yeah, well, it's a little lane. It's not that big a deal. I said, no, it's a big deal. It's going to eat this auction. It's going to eat the whole thing.
Because it shows you the amount.
Oh yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to the IRS. And he's like, oh well, yeah, whatever. And at that point, it hit me. I'd got him to tell me a little bit about the story of how he earned the Medal of Honor in the Korean War, and he was a true hero. And that's when I was reminded that the Medal of Honor is given to you for bravery and not honesty. And so the internal revenue. So I called the Internal Revenue Service, and they sent me to the agent that was over that file, and it was a nice lady, and she said, they owe us a lot. And she said, what's this auction gonna do? And I said, I don't know, it's gonna bring 250, 275, 300,000, something like that. And she said, we're gonna get the whole thing. I said, I understand. This is how, we just was headed all on the same page, how all this is going down. So that's cool. You take your commission out and you send us the rest. And I understood. And when you talk to an IRS agent, yes, whatever. And anyway, so that's how that went down. My other experience with the IRS was a real estate auction in Waco, Texas, which is where I was raised. And it was an old hotel in downtown Waco, losing money. It was owned by two brothers who were attorneys in Oklahoma. They said this deal is, we just got to get out from under it, sell it, whatever it brings, that'll be fine. And okay. And I thought, well, its value, its best use was probably tear the thing down and make a parking lot for the county because it's close to the courthouse. Anyway, so we advertised it. We had 8 registered bidders with cashier's checks for part of their down payment. They're serious. We had a small meeting room, smaller than this, about half this size. Had chairs around the outside, had a little lectern there. I'm giving the opening statement. Now, I preface this by saying I called the local McLennan County IRS office, talked to the head person there, told him, said, listen, understand you have a lien, it's like $15,000, very small. I said, we have to pay you at closing, or we cannot close. He goes, yeah, I understand. I said, I just want to let you know you're getting paid. He said, good, we can write this, sign off on this file. I said, yes. I said, it's going to sell absolute, and it's certainly going to bring more than $15,000. He said, great, glad to hear it. Okay, so we're good with the IRS. That was the only lien I found. And told the owners about that, and they go, yeah, but it's not hardly anything. Okay. Auction day. I'm giving the terms and conditions, and the back 2 doors of the meeting room, boom, fly open. Guy walks in, identifies he's in plain clothes, identifies himself as, I'm Agent so-and-so of the Internal Revenue Service Enforcement Division. And he's got 4 deputy sheriffs with him, and I know one of them. And they're standing kind of out in the hallway, going, brother, and he comes in and said, there's not going to be any auction here today, so y'all can all leave. Now let me tell you, when a peace officer, policeman, like that, with a badge and a gun, tells you to do something, we need y'all to leave this area. You get your stuff together and, you go ahead. Yeah, we'll leave. When an IRS agent tells you to clear the room, poof. It was like magic. Just poof, they're all gone. They're gone, and I'm standing there, and this all just happened in seconds. And I'm still kind of in shock. And, of course, the 2 brothers who are attorneys, they're there, and they're sitting behind me, and they jump up, and they're like, what? Are you kidding me? And they get into an argument, and I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to stay out of this for a while. And I'm standing over to the side, and they argue, and they say, this is going to be paid off. This is BS, blah, blah, blah. And the agent turns around to me after like 30 minutes and says, okay, well, bring your buyers back in here and you can have an auction. I said, bring them back in here? I said, they're not in this building. Matter of fact, they are probably not even in the county. They are gone. Gone. And they're not coming back. You have scared the hell out of them. And sure enough, they were gone. And so we're like, what are you saying? We go downstairs, and there are agents chaining the doors and putting do not cross, do not enter. I paraphrase, the government will nail you if you do. On all the doors, there was a handful of people. Well, the handful of people that were staying there, I can date you what year this was. This was 1994. In 1993, in Waco, Texas, there was an issue with the Branch Davidians. The survivors all were staying at that hotel.
Oh my gosh.
When the first thing happened and some of the people left, this guy, the owners felt sorry for him. And then, the word was, where are we going to take them, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we've got an empty hotel. They can stay there. Well, then, at the end, the few survivors that came out, they were there too. Well, what happened was it made it very easy for attorneys to come meet with all of them in one place at one time and could more rapidly get a case together for that. And so the agent is there. He's got his name tag on at the door. When we're going out, I've got my files and stuff, and I'm still in shock. And I'm watching them. They're chaining the doors. And I looked at his name tag and I said, hey, I talked to you. I told you there was not going to be any problem here. You're going to get paid. He goes, yeah, I know. And I said, what the hell is going on? He said, well, all I can tell you is I received a call this morning from, and then he hesitated. He said, very high up, to stop this sale and close down this building. Now, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, government is bad kind of guy. I'm usually pretty much salute the flag and trust in the government. That really was shocking to me. So, the point of the story is, if you ever see anything on a UCC lien search that says Internal Revenue Service, you pay very close attention to that. You do not mess with those people.
Why didn't you pay for that first before the auction?
Because they said there's not a problem.
I think he said, what did you pay?
What?
No, I said why didn't you?
Why? Well, in retrospect, if we'd have known that this was going to happen, we certainly would, but nobody had any idea this was going to happen. It was very common. I mean, there's always liens and stuff, notes payable on real estate, and you just pay them at closing. It's just, it's a deal.
Yeah.
Seen it done 100 times. There's a sales tax lien. There's whatever. Well,
Did they suspect tax evasion or something? Something bigger, so
No. They just didn't want the Branch Davidians all in one place.
Yeah, I think they scared that's what they wanted.
They just wanted to scatter them.
Yeah, 100%. That was all.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize. We kind of got into the weeds there on the Internal Revenue Service.
It's a good story.
Once you've been hired to do a bankruptcy auction, there are several things. There's a lot of things that have to happen. You have to jump through some more hoops. You have to have a bankruptcy bond. Is that a big deal? No, it is not a big deal. I can get a bankruptcy bond as soon as I can get on the phone. If they're not busy, I can have one probably sent to me in 15 minutes. Okay, so that's not a big deal.
Do you just get that through an insurance agent? Is that where you get that?
Usually, well, yes, and then your insurance agent will send you to an insurance company that does bonds.
Right.
There's one in New Orleans that I've always used. They're very nice and they know exactly what you need. It's very easy. So you have to do that. And then there are different types in your information. We've got some, Laura's included some glossary of definitions. Okay, you'll notice 7 and 11. There's also 12 and 13 chapters in bankruptcy. But what you're usually going to see is you're going to see chapter 7. If we're getting involved, there's a complete liquidation, or there's on occasion there can be a chapter 11. That's reorganization. But sometimes in the reorganization, the court will say, "What are you doing with all this equipment over here?" They go, "Well, we don't really use that equipment anymore. We stopped that project, blah, blah, blah." They say, "Well, that's you got to sell that, come up with cash. We got to pay some of these debtors." And so you'll see a possible partial liquidation of some assets in a chapter 11. You have to file a piece of paper, a form that says you have no connection. You don't know who the debtor is. You're not related to the debtor. You've never done business with the debtor, all that kind of stuff. That's a declaration of disinterest. And then basically the trustee sends the request to the bankruptcy judge wanting to hire you, and they would usually sign off on that. That's usually not a problem. But what they do is they tell everybody what you're charging. And so the debtor's attorney may look at it and say, "That's crazy. I don't think that's fair," or whatever. And usually you'll never get that far because the trustee will go, "Well, you can't charge that much." As a matter of fact, they usually tell you, "Here's what you can charge." But so there's a few things you have to go through. And as I said, there's a court authority to hire the auctioneer. They send that out. It takes a while. And they also have a notice of sale to the creditors. They have to send that out to all the creditors. They have to give them 20 days to respond. And so you sit around for a while on that. Then you're going to tell them how you're going to advertise and conduct the sale. The terms and conditions, a lot of time the trustee will just hand you, "This is what we expect." How you're going to collect the proceeds, and then you make the settlement to the trustee. Now here's the part that always irked me. The auctioneer delivers the gross proceeds, including the buyer's premium if you used one. Everything goes to the court. And then you wait for another filing
To get
to get paid.
Yeah.
And it can take a while. It can take a while.
Bless you.
Thank you.
On the report of the sale, once again, they'll tell you what all they want. They're going to want to know who every bidder was. They're going to want to know their phone number, mailing address, all that information. You have to document if you're going to charge them expenses, which you usually do. You usually charge a low commission rate plus expenses, and you have to document everything. And then you have to give that to the trustee. They file all that. The trustee petitions the court for repayment. Then you see if there's any objections. Now, I never had this happen to me, but I've talked to auctioneers that got the auction's over, had a great auction, and the judge is looking at what you're going to make and say, "I think that's too much."
What?
And just make a big X through paying you $60,000, pay 40. Well, I'm going to complain. There is no one to complain to. There is no one.
He's the top guy. He makes.
Yeah.
There is no one to complain
So
to.
unless you're friends with the judge,
That's a good thing also.
Which is-
If you're friends,
yeah.
if you're
Make
friends with the
judges.
bankruptcy judge, that's a good
Yeah.
thing, a good person to be friends with too. Yeah.
A lot of
Let me
people
get
do that.
That money that's
Oh, it's
slashed
fucking
just
terrible.
is appropriated.
Poof.
Where's it go?
It's goes to help pay off. It goes to help pay off the debt, all the people that they owed money to. Well, no, they may have sold them something. They may have done a lot for it, and the guy never paid them, and that's why they declared bankruptcy.
So you get to work, so you can pay him more?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just telling you this is the way it is. The other
They
thing,
can come in and take everything, they can take your couch, they can take your watches, they can take your tie, they
Take
can
a
take your
bullet.
suitcase, they can take.
yeah.
they'll-
So-
Isn't there always due process? I mean, you always have an appeals process in every,
You do. You appeal to that judge.
so it's dead.
Yeah.
You're not part of the lawsuit. You can't appeal it like we could, because you're not part of the lawsuit.
Very good. Yep.
That's a good point. So here's another deal. We know one of the things I told you yesterday. One of the big rules is you never put the money up front for a real estate auction.
Right.
Sure don't.
You put $20,000 up for a real estate auction, okay? Everything looks great. High interest. People talking about it. They want to come. You're thinking this is going to be great. Day before the auction, the seller files bankruptcy.
Oh. Whoa.
Guess what's going to happen? You are not going to have an auction the next day. The trustees auctioneer will probably come in and have an auction at some point in the future. You and your $20,000 will go get in line with everybody else they owe money to and hope when the bankruptcy is cleared
Oh,
in a couple
Lord.
of years, you might get $5,000 back on your 20. Now that's another reason, when you're talking to a seller, be it personal property or especially real estate, and they ever use the word bankruptcy.
Run.
Well, not necessarily run. You might take a couple of steps back. And now, we've thought about, our attorney said we might need to declare bankruptcy. Okay. And then I would probably say, well, here's where I have a problem. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
We're going to invest a lot of money, time, so forth, setting, let's just say it's personal property, make it easy. We're going to have money invested in this auction. We're going to spend $5,000 in advertising, yada, 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 and then if you declare bankruptcy, the auction's going to get canceled, and I'm going to be standing out there in the street with empty pockets, okay? And so how are we going to protect me in that situation? And that's when you just have to start thinking outside the box. Now, and then if you're gonna take any of their possessions and hold it, that could be problematic. And you're probably going to have to talk to their attorney at some point, okay? And let their attorney decide, well, here's what could happen, okay? But if you tell the bankruptcy court, we're going to come up with all this cash through this auction, then they might sign off on it. The bankruptcy trustee might go, okay, yeah, that's cool. And a lot of times you'll see people who are owed money in a bankruptcy deal, especially if they're a bank, and they have a lien on a car. The bankruptcy court's just going to give it to the bank. Say, here's your car. Take it, get out of here. And they're going to deal with everything else. Okay, so just some food for thought there. Small Business Administration, we talked a little bit about them. The bank is basically doing everything. They're going to give legal notices and they're going to contract with you, and then you're going to do the rest of it as the auctioneer. You conduct the sale, you collect the proceeds, and you deliver the net. After you take your money out, you deliver the net to the bank. And that's all cool. City and county, municipalities, other governmental type auctions. There's a bid solicitation process. You can go back right now when you get home. You can contact your local county. You can contact the purchasing department. Say, how do I get on your vendors list for auction services? And they'll say, you go to our website and you fill out a vendor's application, yada, 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 and we'll send you the next time they have a request for proposals, RFPs, for auction services. They'll send you an email and they'll say, we're having this request, and then here's what you got to do. Send your proposal in, yada, yada, yada. There usually are some bonding requirements there. Once again, that's not a big deal. Everybody wants you to have insurance when you start dealing with anybody in the government. and usually a blanket liability insurance policy at least. A lot of governments now want to even see all your auto insurance. They want to know who's driving vehicles on their property. Are they insured? All that kind of stuff. It can become a really heavy-duty process. The state of Texas auction, surplus auction, last I saw it, which has been years since I've even looked at it, the commission rate was like 2.5%, and no buyer's premium, or a small, now I think they charge a 5% buyer's premium or something, I can't remember exactly. But they sell a lot, they sell a lot of stuff, especially a lot of vehicles and things. But I remember back in the day where you printed it, and this is not an exaggeration, for those of you old enough to remember the analogy of a Sears catalog, Sears catalog used to be at least probably an inch and a half thick. When you printed out the requirements for the state to get the state auction, the request for proposal was about as thick as a Sears catalog. And so it was a lot of work, and then you're going to work for next to nothing. So it wasn't something that a lot of people chase. And then here's the killer. They usually go with the lowest bid. That company doesn't have as much experience as we do. We really don't. We have a process here. That's all they care about is the process, because that's what they're hired to do. We have a process of how we hire people, plumbers, auctioneers, whoever, and this is what has to happen. And yeah, we'd like for it to be a successful auction, but of course they're not making any more money in their pocket, however great the auction does. But if the I's aren't dotted and the T's aren't crossed, they can lose their job. So that's all they really care about. So when you visit with people like that, you make sure everything is in order. You are organized up to here and on your A game all the time. And you provide them with lots of paperwork and reports and stuff, which all auction software now can pump that stuff out. They love that. They really do. They really do. But the lowest bid's going to get it. Do they have a license? Yeah, they have an auctioneer's license. Well, then we assume they know what they're doing. Well, you're wrong. and they don't care. In Internal Revenue, all of these, all of these governmental agencies, and I haven't dealt with any of these people in probably 10 years, but they have a high turnover rate among their agents. Years ago, 30 years ago, we did an auction, vehicles and stuff, for a government entity, and it was a great auction. They sent out another appraiser, a third-party appraiser came in, appraised the equipment. We did the auction, it went to 115% of 120% of appraised value, and we are thinking, we are the new kings. We are the new pros from Dover. And so, we did all of our reports, we sent everything in, and I hadn't heard anything. I'd called the agent we were dealing with, and I hadn't heard anything back, and so I thought, well, I at least wanted an attaboy, and so I called him. And they said, oh, he's no longer with us. Who's taking his job? So-and-so, so-and-so. Can I speak with them? Talk to them? Now, who are you again? This is Scott Swenson. Now, what do you do? I'm an auctioneer. We just conducted an auction for you 2 weeks ago. And he's like, oh, okay, well, thank you. Attaboy. Well, that's all I need. And so that's one of the things, so you develop, we talked about those relationships, and we're building a relationship here. They're calling us, they want us to help, and this is a good relationship, and they think we're great, and we're doing them a good job, and you go, man, we've built this relationship. And then poof, they're gone. And now we got to start all over. With somebody else. Yeah. So here are potential problems with this. with, you know, if the IRS calls you and says, we want you to repossess this equipment, we want you to go in, we'll send agents with you, and we're gonna close down this business, and then we're gonna lock the doors, change the locks, and you're gonna liquidate the place. And that's it's kind of intimidating. Mike can tell you a good story about when he went into the Cushman plant many years ago. It was 8 or 10 acres under the roof, and he was with the bankers, and they came in and basically told the staff, we hate to tell you this, but you no longer have a job, and we need you to leave the building. And that's pretty heavy, I'm sure. But hostile parties, you can have hostile parties. People don't want this to happen. You can also have hostile parties if you're ever dealing in a divorce situation. You're going to go talk to somebody, well, I own this with my husband, and we're getting a divorce. We want this liquidated. The first question you want to ask is, does the other party know that you're talking to me? And because you probably don't want to visit with them at the same time, but you want to visit with both people, and they both need to sign the agreement, because that can be a hostile situation too. So the community sometimes can be mad. The business is shutting down, whatever. The debtors are mad. Former employees are mad. If it's real estate, a lot of times when things get shut down quickly, you know, there can be issues that didn't get cleaned up if you were doing it in a traditional, you know, listing, environmentally. Especially in any kind of ag situation where you've had vehicles and they have like fuel tanks and things like that. You always need to be on the watch out for environmental concerns. Utilities, sometimes they're off and you can't see anything inside. And then sometimes they have hidden assets. We did a huge construction company in El Paso, Texas years ago for the IRS, and they had equipment on jobs all over the county that literally, you know, one day the owner said, sorry guys, this party's over, and they had, you know, scrapers out here on this project, and then I think they just hid some equipment here and there. And I'm like, and they said, well, we need you to find it. And I'm going, wow. So I go out to El Paso, and I thought, okay, who's going to know where this equipment is? And I went to what was the biggest heavy equipment maintenance repair company. And old guy owned it. He's in his probably 80s. And I said, we're liquidating ABC Road and Bridge, whatever they were called, construction. And I said, I got to find all their equipment. And he goes, okay, I can do that. Really? He said, yeah. He said, it's not hard if you know what you're doing. And I said, okay. And so I hired him. He found everything in like 2 days. And I was going like 20 pieces of heavy equipment scattered all over the place. He goes, yep. And he could get it and bring it in, make sure it's running, etc. And that was a godsend, because if it had just been me out there trying to, you know, where do you even start? I don't know what projects there are. It takes a lot of research. And
Probably sitting behind his shop.
You say it again?
So it's probably sitting behind his shop.
Yeah. So sometimes locating the assets can be an issue as well. And so if you look at some of these bankruptcy definitions, you know, I think that all kind of make sense to you, some things that you'll hear.
Sometimes do they call it, is it the Texas Rangers that'll sometimes get called in on bankruptcies, like when they're locking gates and stuff? I thought
No, it wouldn't be a bankruptcy, because that's going to be federal. So the Texas Rangers come in, possibly if you own state sales tax, or property tax, then in theory,
We've had some cattle guys that have had the rangers come in.
well, now,
and their
the
gate.
cattle guys, you know,
That might be something to check.
the stock agents are special agents attached to the Texas Rangers. They'll even have what looks like a Texas Ranger badge, but it'll say like stock detective on it. They look like a Texas Ranger. They carry the same kind of guns and tooled belts, and you know, look pretty badass. And yeah, when you see cattle rustling, yeah, those guys show up. It means business.
So have you ever got to a point where you were doing a bankruptcy auction, then somebody bought it, bought it out of bankruptcy, like another company?
paid it off? Usually, if there is a chance of getting it paid off, that has been pursued to the end of the earth before they're going to do that. That's very, very rare. When it goes to bankruptcy, there's no more lifeboats. There's nothing. So you don't see that very often. Okay, so we've only got a short amount of time. Do we need to take a quick break?
Yeah, we do. Oh, we're leaving at 9. It's about 7.
7 minutes. Then we're going to do business liquidations and get you on the road.
Business.
It'll be better.
Just send them a message.
Get this framed managed.
What's that?
My artwork for tomorrow night's auction is painted by kids at St. Jude.
Oh.
So I'm gonna go to maybe Walmart,